Many Americans hire a financial advisor for guidance. On today's program, I'll discuss some of the things I think you should ask anyone who offers to help you with your finances. Some advisors might not like that, but that's okay. This isn't a popularity contest. It's PlanStrongerTV, and I'm your host, David Holland. Ready? Let's go. Welcome back. So, working with financial advisors. There are a lot of advantages with working with a financial planner and advisor to guide you in your financial future, especially with your retirement. But you have to make some choices when you choose to work with an advisor. Before you even get to the idea of working with an advisor, you first decide if you're going to do it yourself or hire somebody. And if you're going to do it yourself, regardless of where you are, or how old you are, or how close you are to retirement, you've got to have the time, you've got to have the skill, and you've got to have the desire. You've got to be interested in managing your money. You've got to know what you're doing, and you've got to have the time to put aside to do it. Now, if you're going to work with an advisor, there's a whole other set of considerations, and I'll give you as much as I can in our time together today. First, with an advisor, you've got another set of requirements that are similar to whether you do it yourself or not. If you're going to work with an advisor, then these are some of the requirements. You need to like the advisor. Doesn't matter how good they are, how talented they are, how trustworthy they are. If you don't like them, it's not going to work. Now, next is you've got to trust them. So it doesn't matter if they're likable. It doesn't matter if you think they have skill. If you don't trust them, it's not going to work. And third, you've got to believe they know what they're doing. So you could like them, you could trust them, but if you don't think they know what they're doing, it's not going to work. So there's got to be all three of those present because you are asking them to guide you in a very important area in your life. You know, it's right up there with healthcare and other critical parts of your life, your family, your health, your faith. All of those things are really important. Well, guess what? Financial has got to be a close second behind those. So you're trusting that person to help you. You need to feel confident in their ability to help you. Now, there's a couple different approaches you can take on how to find an advisor. You can kind of think of it as coming from two different directions. And you'll tell which one I think, of course, is the right one, but you have to decide what's important to you. The first is to say, okay, I need the following types of services, or I'm looking for certain things. I'm looking for somebody, for example, to help me figure out how to invest between now and when I retire, to help me figure out the types of insurances I need, to help me consider tax consequences, to help me think through my overall plan. Or if you're already retired, you might say, well, I need somebody to help me figure out if I should get long-term care insurance or not, or what I should do about Social Security, when I should take it, how I should make those choices, whether I need to have an IRA or 401k, how do I diversify, how do I do all those things. So my point there is that all of those things are all criteria, that things that you are looking for. That then would drive you, if you follow that approach, you say, well, these are the things I need, then you would go about finding an advisor based on those criteria and say, okay, I'm looking for this kind of advisor, and I'll look for advisors in my area or somebody that I can talk to over the phone that will let me do this work and have this done for me. Now, there are a lot of other considerations like the credentials of the advisor, the licensing, all of that. But the question is, do you put what you need first, Or do you choose the advisor and say, well, you know what? I really like this advisor. They've got some good credentials, and I'll have them help me. Kind of putting the advisor first. So you probably can tell. I think you should do the first part. I think you should identify what you need. Certainly want to screen and evaluate different advisors. Make sure that you pick the best advisor you can for your situation, but make that selection based on you and your needs, and then everything else is secondary. Now, there's still some very, very important questions that you should ask an advisor before you hire them. Now, if you are saying, all right, I've got my criteria, I know what I'm looking for, how do I find an advisor? What's important as part of that process? Now, fortunately, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of advisors in the United States. I think the total is like 1 million advisors. That's a lot of choice. So you can afford to be picky. You could say, I want an advisor who is independent, or I want them to be with a larger company. I want them to have certain credentials. I want them to specialize in certain areas. I want them to be what I'm looking for. Yeah, it's like ordering a pizza. You can say, all right, well, this is the kind of pizza I want, and then go find the restaurant that makes that kind of pizza. So you can be picky. So while you're being picky, it's okay to ask questions. Your first step is to search for advisors that are going to fit what you're looking for. And then be prepared to ask them questions. I recommend that somebody sit down the first time with a potential advisor and ask them questions about their firm, ask them questions about themselves personally. And I recommend asking some questions that are kind of forward. But again, who are we talking about here? We're talking about a person you're going to trust to manage your money, to help you with this thing that we already said is really high on your list. So how independent they are, how much they can put your needs as a priority. You say, well, doesn't everybody make my needs a priority? Well, some advisors have more latitude and more flexibility than others in terms of the type of product they can recommend and the number of different choices within the category. So for example, let's say an advisor is going to recommend a mutual fund to you. Some advisors are going to have more latitude or more choices to pick from than other advisors. They also may have different degrees of flexibility in terms of the products. Some advisors, for example, may only specialize or only offer one type of product, mutual funds or annuities, or maybe they specialize in long-term care. So there's a lot of choices. One of the key things that is really important is to know how they're compensated. So if you're interviewing an advisor, you can't be bashful about this one. You've got to ask, how are you paid? How do you get paid for helping me achieve my goals, my financial plans? And when you get that answer, don't be afraid to ask more questions. Ask, are they willing to disclose all fees and commissions, all of that to you? Now, one of the things I see way too often, I'll just tell you flat out, way too often I see people surprised at what they're paying in fees. They come in to meet with me for a second opinion, and way too often they do not know what they're paying, and almost always when they don't know, it's more than they think it is. So don't be bashful about asking that question. It's not rude, okay? In all the other areas of our life, we do not accept vague or lack of clarity or just non-disclosure period about what things cost. You take your car to the dealership for service. That little light's flashing on the dash. You take the car to the dealership. You say, here are the keys. Fix whatever's wrong with it. I'll pick it up a couple days. No. First thing you're going to get before you let them do the work when you're not sure what it's going to cost is an estimate. You're going to know what it's going to cost before they do the work. Same with an advisor. And I think any reputable advisor is going to be straightforward and candid about how the compensation part works. It's not that complicated. And more with the internet and technology, you know, a lot of this information is out there. Now, One other thing that's really important, which is also I've seen be an issue sometimes for people, is when you're going to hire an advisor. Maybe you want to change from your current advisor, maybe you've relocated, maybe you're not satisfied, maybe what you need at this point in your life, your current advisor doesn't offer. Maybe you're ready to retire and they're not really focused on retirement planning, more so they've been focused on helping you accumulate money. I've seen situations where an advisor did a good job of helping that client accumulate and grow their assets, but when it came time to focus more on retirement and taking money out, that wasn't really what the advisor did, so people have looked for other choices. When you look for an advisor, it's natural to ask around. I want to give you a word of caution. When you ask your friends or family or whomever about their experiences and maybe who they've worked with as an advisor, don't let that familiarity or reference of the other person give you an overconfidence. Now, I'm not opposed to referrals. I think it's a good, we want to do business with people who have done a good job for people we know. That's important. I would just say that lets that advisor that's been referred to you, or you've been referred to them, that lets them make your short list. Don't automatically choose them. I think you should pick 3 advisors, find them somehow, some way, and interview them, and then evaluate them and kind of compare them and ask them to tell you how they will do what they will do for you. Most financial people, especially that are in the role of advising clients, are pretty good talkers, right? I mean, that's what they do for a living. They talk a lot. They have other people or a company that helps support them. So most advisors are not bashful about describing how they do what they do for their clients. So go in, meet with them, talk with them. Now, here's a little tip. When you go to see them, pay attention to the office. Pay attention to the staff. Pay attention to your surroundings. If it were me, I'd show up about 10, 15 minutes early, and then when I got there, I would sit there, get a cup of coffee or whatever they offer, and just kind of watch what's going on. Do things seem a little chaotic and out of control? Is it professional? How happy do the staff seem to be? You tell a lot about a company by their staff and how happy or how comfortable they are. If everybody looks stressed, and if the phone is ringing and it seems like people aren't getting through or there's a lot of messages being taken, that would be a question for me. Pay attention, okay? Does there seem to be a problem? Because if an advisor is having problems, it usually will bubble up. Not every financial advisor has the same structure or the same setup. Some are in a large office. Some work, with a bank, brokerage firm, insurance company. That's their employer, the company they work for. Some are independent. Some work out of their homes and they go and see people in their homes. I'd be careful in terms of how you select who you want to work with and where you want to receive services. I'm a little bit of a brick and mortar guy. I'll confess that to you. I like the fact that I go into that bank or I go in and there is an established business. That makes me more confident versus doing everything, over the internet. I'm just not that's not me. Now, other people are more comfortable with that. But I like the idea of knowing where the buck stops. And on that point, here's another tip for you. When you work with an advisor, here's a question. Who supervises you? Where does the buck stop? In other words, if they work for a big brokerage company or a bank or insurance company, before you choose to do business with them, do they have a sales manager? Do they have a brokerage manager or a branch manager? Who's up the line? Because the time to find out who to talk to if there's a problem is when? Before there's a problem. Know where you go. And by the same token, is the advisor part of a team Do you talk to the advisor each time you call and you want to do something or you have a question? Do they have an assistant? Do they have a team that helps them? That's also very important if it's an independent advisor doesn't work for a bank, brokerage firm, or insurance company, but is independent and has their own company. Do they have a team that supports them, or is it just them? What if they're out of the office? What if they only have one person, or it's a small office? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you need to know how they're structured as part of your decision-making process, right? Because you're interviewing 3 advisors. So when you compare them, literally, you put them in a comparison format and think about it. Now, that's the financial planner's way of making a decision, but I think it's a healthy one for you to say, all right, well, let me compare these different options for me. Hey, this person's been recommended to me by a friend. Okay, they make the short list. I'm going to talk to them. They seem happy with them. Maybe I will be too. I'll see if I'm as much of a match as my friend is. Don't assume just because it works for your friend that it's going to work for you. You might not be the same as your friend in terms of what you're looking for or what you need. You may be a completely different animal. I've seen clients refer their friends to me, and it's interesting because sometimes they're similar, but in other cases they are totally different in terms of what they want, where they are in life, their goals, how much money they have. Birds of a feather flock together. Yeah, a lot of the times, but not always. So take those things together. There's a lot of considerations in hiring an advisor. Take your time, do it right, be careful. And you know what I'm going to say, if you do that, you'll plan stronger. Okay, time for viewer questions. Now this one I don't have to change your names because it's my parents, Carrie and Connie. And they asked me a few years back about reverse mortgages and why I thought they made sense as part of an overall plan for clients and why I had added a division within my company to offer that service. The short answer is because I've had clients ask me about them for years. In fact, for over a decade, I've had people ask me about them. They've become more mainstream. When they first were created, they didn't have a lot of acceptance initially because they were more expensive by contrast to where they are today. So my mom and dad asked me, said, well, why are you doing this? And I explained to them, well, I think it makes sense. People can use their equity as part of their retirement. They can draw on it, refinance if they need to, their existing home and not have to make that monthly principal and interest payment, still have to pay their taxes and insurance. And so we talked about it. We started offering it at my company. People liked it. And they asked me more and said, well, is this something we should do? And I said, probably. I said, you don't really need to do it. And that's one of the things that people think about reverse mortgages is it's for people who are in a bad spot that they have to have it. They don't need to do this. Their home was paid for. So they thought, though, well, would it be nice to have a line of credit, a reverse mortgage line of credit as a backup just in case? And I said, yes, definitely. So the idea is that by having that line of credit available, you can draw on it later if you need it. You don't have to use it. Still your home, still your equity. You could sell your home. You can do whatever you want, but it's like a line of credit. It is a line of credit, but it's like a home equity line of credit. The difference is that if you do pull on it, you don't have to make principal and interest payments like you would with a home equity loan, and they can't take it away from you. It's guaranteed. It's going to be there. Well, the thing that's interesting about it is if you run the numbers, and this is something I share with them and I think you'll find interesting. If you say you get a reverse mortgage line of credit, you don't need it, you don't have a loan on your home, you don't need to refinance your existing mortgage to do the reverse mortgage, but you just want the line of credit. And let's say you're 62 years old, and let's say based on the value of your home, you can get a reverse mortgage line of credit, I call it a RevLock, for $100,000. When you have that line of credit established, what's interesting is that line of credit will grow. It'll grow at a predetermined rate, and it's based on the interest rate that is applicable at the time, and rates may change in the future. They probably will, but the bottom line is if you assume the recent rates we've had, that $100,000 line of credit will grow each year, that by the time that 62-year-old couple is 78, ready for this, that $100,000 line would grow to $250,000, even if it exceeds the value of the home. Interesting, huh? So having that line out there, and I'm thinking about it for my parents' situation, having that line out there is an excellent tool that we can use if we need it. If we never need it, okay, no harm, no foul. But I like that kind of planning, and I think it's something to consider as part of an overall plan. Great question. Glad we could answer it. And again, consider this as part of an overall plan. One more thing before we go. May-December couples, Social Security. Special planning required. Well, with a lot of couples, you want to defer as long as you can, of course, in taking Social Security, right? That's what we hear all the time in financial circles. But especially for May-December couples where you've got a significant age difference between the two spouses, let's say the husband's 65 and the wife is 50. It could be the other way around, but let's just say the husband's 65, wife is 50. And they've been married at least 9 months. She's going to be entitled to his Social Security if he dies. So let's say that they have other assets to use as well, or there's other sources of income. If they're able to put off on drawing on his Social Security, then that will create a much more substantial Social Security survivor benefit for her. I've seen situations that just by waiting to 70, that we could see a $2,500 or $3,000 or more a month survivorship benefit. That is huge for that younger spouse because that will give them a lot of income where they might not have had other assets. So not only is it important for Social Security with regular couples, that are closer in age, but for May-December, very important, okay? So keep that as part of your mindset if that situation applies to you. And the same also applies for situations with divorce. Another thing that's often overlooked is that in order to draw off your ex-spouse's Social Security benefits and consider that as part of the equation, must be married at least 10 years. Social Security has some nuances, but can be a great part of an overall plan if you plan it correctly.
This is your 2-minute warning.
Yes, it is. 2-minute warning. Follow the money. That's my advice to you. Follow the money. That's the warning. So when you're working with an advisor, one of the things I think you should expect is that they disclose their compensation to you. How they get it, where it comes from, and how much it is when they are providing a product, service, or whatever the case may be to you. So you want to know how they're paid. It can affect their recommendations. It's kind of on a related note, their licensing also comes into play. What are they licensed to do? So I'll give you a real-world example. I had a couple come in to see me for financial advice. They had been to another financial person and shared with me some of the recommendations they were making. The recommendations were different than mine, and it's a small world. I knew who the advisor was, and I knew that the focus of the other advisor was primarily on one particular type or category of product. Well, no surprise, that is what that other advisor recommended, and he recommended they put most of their money into that. My recommendation, I felt, was that they needed to have some money in an investment account and some money that was more secure and more of a financial insurance product. I looked at balancing it a little bit more. The other financial person had recommended putting more to the insurance side. Now, different advisors have different recommendations, but was how the advisor compensated affect their recommendation? That's a question that you ask. It's a question you should ask of any advisor. That person should ask me, how will you be paid? And then we disclose it. Knowing that will help you plan stronger.
If you would like more information about the topics and our guests featured in this series, please visit our website at PlanStrongerTV.com. Also, if you have a question you would like David to answer, please send it to questions@PlanStrongerTV.com.